Hello and welcome to the third devlog of a mobile zombie shooter called Meeting Joe. And in the last devlog I mentioned that I needed to think a bit more about the core mechanic, the game loops, and how to find some ways of making sure that the player isn't just playing one or two games, but that there's some kind of need of checking in a couple of times, coming back a few times a day or a week to see how the game has progressed. And I did a bit of paper prototyping, and my current thinking is that everything will revolve around a key city. That city will require resources, it will consume resources on a daily basis. Every 24 hours, the city will check if those three resources, tools, food, and medications are available. If they are, the city will grow, population will grow. If they are not, the city will fail, the game is over. So, how will you get the resources? You will complete different levels, such as, the ones that you've seen, or some future levels like the butcher or the warehouse, where you will face a combination of waves of zombies, maybe some bosses, nothing crazy that we haven't seen before in the world, but you will need to complete that level. You will gain all three resources, and those three resources go to your resource growth manager in the city, and the city will grow. The more the city grows, potentially the more zombies you have, the more difficult it will get, the more resources you will need, requiring more levels, more playtime, and so on. And there you go, that's the core game loop. You will also have a chance of unlocking modifiers. So those modifiers are aimed to make the game more interesting, but also more challenging and give replayability and variability to the player. So before you choose a level, you can select one of three modifiers. Those could be, for example, increased movement speed or slower movement speed, or adding a more difficult zombie, which will increase the resources you gained. So that will impact the resource collection rate, but it also makes it a bit more interesting for the player to choose how they want to play a game. So you can play the same level with 5 different modifiers, and that ensures that the game is a bit more interesting. Now, that was the paper prototype. I then spent a lot of time thinking about all of the things that I need to accomplish. Some of them were probably more easy than others. For example, I successfully have a... Please load Unity, thank you. A screen ad, which was very easy. I was surprised how easy that was. But let's go to the heart and the bread and butter, not the heart and the butter of the game, which is that resource manager. So I think I need to find a way to make it interesting for the player to log into the game, see what are the resource requirements to grow the city, and what are the current resources I have and the current population. So normally the player would finish the game, shoot the zombies, get the resources, but we have the magic developer button where we gain resources. And this is just a dummy image. This isn't going to be final, but this is the centerpiece. The player comes in, he can select the levels on the left side. You can check how much resources do I have. Do I need to play games, or is everything set? If the player, for example, sees, oh, I need more resources, he will then select the level and the accordingly unlocked resources. So every couple hundred city population, you can unlock resources. For this level, because we hit 800 population, we unlock 4 modifiers: adrenaline, broken leg, beehive, and then Big Bertha. And before the player joins, you can always select no modifier or one of the other ones. So for this example, we can choose adrenaline, where the zombies are quicker, you're quicker, and it impacts the resources. Then the level would load, and in that level you can then also see that I successfully implemented a very rudimentary 2 virtual joystick controls. I've checked it on my mobile phone, it works. It's not the end product, and obviously you can't shoot, but the idea is you move with the left joystick, the right one is rotating, so that way you have perfect control of independently moving and aiming, which is important for a shooting-based game. And then if you release the right button, you will shoot. So technically everything works. It's a bit of a surprise that I managed to get all those different event systems and observer patterns to work. I had to spend a bit of time reading the documentation, trying and getting a lot of gray hair, but I'm really happy that I managed this script. The interesting thing is the resources will grow, and the city growth will update if you're not playing. So you don't need to, wait 24 hours in game, which would be stupid, but you can just play 2 or 3 games, spend 5 minutes, and at that point you can then, close the game if you have the resources, and then after 24 hours the game will automatically progress, which is great. Not sure where I will fit in the ads and so on, but I don't really care. Again, it's not about the priority of this game to be super monetized. It's more like a nice feature. And the one thing I do need to figure out is, of course, how do I want different levels to have unique attributes, different enemies, what additional levels do I need? But more importantly, I also need to think about one of the nice papers I've read, the MDA paper, which is a formal approach to game design. I can link the reference in the paper, but it starts off from defining the aesthetics, not how it looks like, but how it should feel for the player, and then defining how can I achieve those feelings and ambitions with the game dynamics, and how can I translate the game dynamics from the mechanics, the individual pieces of things I implement to make those dynamics, and then the aesthetics. And I keep coming back to what I said in the last devlog about Rambo and Doom and Serious Sam, because those games are just invoking a feeling of being in action. There's non-stop action, there's not much story. It's just it's intuitive, it's easy, it's constant combat, and the key frame for Doom is this push forward combat, and that's the feeling that you get from playing the games. And that's something that I need to figure out what I want these aesthetics and these feelings to be, and then translate it into more tangible things, like how can I make the player challenged? How can I make the player feeling pumped up and always be in combat and stressed out about the next wave and so on? And then what are the individual mechanics, the individual things? How does it translate to the level, to the player, to the shooting, to the UI, to the mechanics, to the visual representation of the cities? And that will be the determining factor. It's not just randomly putting in some random variations of zombies and hoping for the best, and then maximize the visual variety and hope for the best, but it's actually dissecting it from this feeling that I want the player of just being in constant battle and constant zombie wave challenge mode, and then translating this down. So that will be a huge thing that I need to figure out. And secondly, also the city growth. I don't want to be too challenging. I also don't want it to be too boring, where coming back to the point of play to win, where it gets so time consuming or so difficult that you need to watch 500 ads or spend real currency to unlock something that allows you to progress. I want probably some kind of S-curved city growth, slow growth in the beginning, and then it gets more challenging, and then it plateaus, and then balancing that with how much time the player needs to play on unlocking the required resources. At the moment, it's very rudimentary. It's every 24 hours the resources double and the city growth doubles, but that's just for testing purposes. So I'll need to find some kind of magic mechanism of having a good S-curve growth and balancing it, but that's a problem for future me. There's a lot of thinking about interesting modifiers, how I can make it more challenging, but at this stage I feel like it's a good way of having this loop between the city growth and the player needing to get those resources. It's more about how can I make it visually interesting, that the player feels some kind of connection to that city, that it's not just a static dashboard of some numbers and then some random futuristic city. That's going to be really difficult and something I'll probably obsess about, but again, something I'll need to worry about for the future. But yeah, that's where we are. I'm really happy with the coding progress, the prototyping. Yeah, and more thinking to come. Let's hope for some more future insights, and thanks for staying tuned, and hope to see you in the next devlog, and bye bye.